There are fires that cannot be extinguished with water. They are extinguished with distance, with air, with time, because the closer you get, the more you burn. And there are people who are just that, fires disguised as home, places where you once felt warmth, but now only know how to consume you. Withdrawing from there is not easy, I know, because one wants to stay, fix, understand, until you understand that if you continue for one more minute, there will be nothing left of you. And then without noise, without drama, without warnings, you leave, not out of pride, for survival. There are relationships so toxic, so unbalanced, so empty, that staying becomes an act of self-destruction. But nobody teaches you how to leave in silence, to disappear without giving explanations, to let go without scandal. And there lies the power. Because when you understand who you are and how much you are worth, you no longer need to justify your absence. The absence justifies itself. This video is not a fairy tale. It is not soft. It is not comfortable. It's a reality check. Because what I'm going to tell you is not pretty, but it's true. Sometimes self-love doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't plead. It just leaves, without looking back. And that decision, when it comes from stoicism, from temperance, from self-control, becomes a stronger message than any word. Because silence, when it comes from someone who has already understood everything, is impossible to ignore. Today, you will learn 8 lessons that you can not only apply, but will change you. 8 ways to silently withdraw from a relationship that no longer gives you peace, that no longer adds to you, that no longer deserves you. Because if you don't cut that thread, they will never let go. And I tell you clearly, you don't need to end that story with a full stop. Sometimes it's enough to stop writing. 1. Evaporate without a trace. Have you ever seen how the morning dew evaporates? It makes no noise. It gives no warning. It leaves no trace. It's there, and then suddenly, it's gone. That's how your exit should be. Like vapor dissolving into the air, releasing itself without looking back, needing no witness to make its absence felt. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not to close the door, but to disappear completely. Vanishing without explanation may sound cruel, but sometimes it's the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself. Because as long as you stay on the scene, writing, replying, clarifying, justifying, you're feeding the cycle. You're giving away your energy, your power, your presence, and that's exactly what a toxic relationship needs to stay alive: your attention. The problem is, many of us were raised to believe that leaving without a word is a lack of empathy, that we need to have the talk, that we should end things the right way. But that doesn't apply when there's no respect, no reciprocity, no awareness on the other side. You can't properly close something that was broken from the start. And you're certainly not obligated to explain your departure to someone who never cared enough to protect your presence. Stoicism teaches that control lies in our decisions, not in other people's reactions. So if you're going to leave, do it with power. Evaporate. Erase your trace. Complete silence. No hints, no passive-aggressive posts. Don't check if they miss you, if they're looking for you, if they're asking about you. Because if you really mean it, you don't need them to notice. You know you're no longer there, and that's enough. They will look for you. Don't doubt it. They'll want to know why. They'll throw a line to make you come back, to make you respond, to get you to explain. And that's where your real test begins, because silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of self-control. It's looking at your phone and not replying. It's hearing they asked about you and feeling no need to respond. It's resisting that temptation to come back just to say you're gone. Your ego will want to scream, "Look what you're losing without me." But the wise soul simply leaves, in calm, in strength, like someone who knows they don't need to convince anyone of their worth, especially not someone who saw it 1,000 times and still ignored it. Evaporating without a trace is not cowardice. It's respect for your peace. It's understanding that sometimes disappearing is the clearest way to say enough. Because if you speak, you open a door. If you explain, you leave a thread. If you justify, you leave room for hope. But if you leave, and not a single trace, not one excuse, not one word remains, then yes, they'll feel the impact. Not because you meant to hurt them, but because you finally chose to protect yourself. Remember this: whoever didn't value your presence doesn't deserve your goodbye. Disappear, like vapor, like mist, like that final sigh that doesn't need to be heard because it already said everything. 2. Keep your reasons under lock and key. Not everything that breaks needs to be explained. There are chests that are buried in the deepest part of the sea, not because they hide something dirty, but because they contain treasures that no one else would know how to value. That's how your reasons should remain, stored, sealed, protected, not out of cowardice, but out of dignity. When you walk away from someone who hurt you, the first thing the world asks you for is an explanation. Why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you give them another chance? Why did you leave like that? But the truth is that you don't have to give answers to those who never asked the right questions while you were still there, wearing yourself out to hold up something that no longer made sense. Your motives are yours. They are not there for others to understand, nor to accept. They are there to save you, to keep you steady when doubts start to knock on the door. Because yes, there will be times when even you will question yourself. Did I do right in leaving? Was I too harsh? What if it wasn't that big of a deal? And that's when you have to remember that your decision didn't come from a whim. It came from exhaustion, from disappointment, from having given everything and still feeling empty. Stoicism teaches that the wise man does not seek external approval. He does not act so that others understand him, nor to be applauded. He acts from his own conscience, from his inner peace. And that's exactly what you have to do. Keeping your reasons doesn't mean hiding. It means not wasting your energy explaining your pain to those who ignored it at the time. Because if you speak up, you will find yourself justifying your actions. You will get into absurd arguments where the other person will minimize what you felt, will distort your story, will defend themselves by attacking. And instead of healing, you will sink deeper. You will return to that place where your truth had no space. Don't explain anything. Don't write paragraphs. Don't write letters that they won't understand. Don't fall into the trap of trying to make someone see clearly what only you experienced firsthand. Because no matter how you say it, those who don't want to understand won't understand. And what's worse, they can use your sincerity as a weapon against you. Stay silent, not as someone who hides something, but as someone who learned that not everything deserves to be shared, that your pain is not public material, that your story doesn't need witnesses to be valid, and if someone really deserves to know your reasons, they won't have to scream for them. They will show it with their presence, with their change, with their respect. And even then, you will decide whether or not to share that. Because now access to your truth is also a privilege, not an automatic right. Keep your reasons as you keep fire, away from reckless hands, not to hide but to protect. Because when one chooses to withdraw with a broken soul and head held high, they don't need to explain anything. They just need to stand firm in their truth. And that truth, when well kept, is what brings you peace. 3. Close the door without answering. Have you ever seen how the gates of a dam close? It's not done slowly. It's not done with doubts. The steel is dropped abruptly, with force, with conviction, because if you leave it open a little longer, the water overflows, sweeps away, destroys. That's how your exit has to be, brutally definitive. Close the door and don't answer anymore. When you decide to leave a toxic, unbalanced, or simply unhealthy relationship, one of the most dangerous temptations is to respond. Respond to their messages, their demands, their manipulations, their empty apologies. And you do it because you feel indebted, because you don't want to be the person who leaves without explanation, because there is still a part of you that hopes that person will understand something, that they will change, that they will react. But that's the trap. That's the invisible rope that keeps you tied to a dynamic that should already be dead. Because deep down, you know, if you answer, you're caught. If you answer, you open the door you had already closed. If you answer, you go back. And it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter if it sounds sincere, if it seems different, if they swear that this time it's for real. A person who truly understood your worth doesn't wait for you to leave to start appreciating you. And much less do they look for you only when they no longer have you. That's not love. It's fear of emptiness. It's a wounded ego. It's need disguised as regret. The Stoics taught that true power lies in selective indifference, choosing what you pay attention to and what you don't. Because every word you respond is a coin of energy that you are giving away, and in a relationship where you've already given everything, there's nothing left to give. Closing the door without answering is declaring, without saying it, that you are no longer going to play that game, that you're not going to get into useless arguments, that you're not going to fall for provocations disguised as dialogue, that you're not going to be part of that emotional drama where you always have to suffer so that the other person learns something. You're not here to be anyone's teacher. You're not here to fix anyone. You're here to live in peace. And yes, it's hard. It's very hard, because silence is uncomfortable, because they're going to provoke you. They're going to talk about everything you gave, everything you could have been. They're going to try to make you feel guilty. And that's where you have to be stronger, not with words, with your silence, with your firmness, with that conviction that screams, without saying anything, you're not going to entangle me again. Closing the door is not being cruel. It's having boundaries. It's protecting your energy. It's respecting yourself so much that you don't even allow yourself a conversation that you know is going to end as always, with you more broken, more confused, more empty. The next time you feel the urge to answer, remember this. Every response you give is a signal that you're still available. And if there's one thing a toxic relationship can't stand, it's losing access to you. So close the door, forcefully, with courage, with determination, and let them knock on the other side. Let them scream. Let them insist. You're not there anymore. You're not playing that game anymore. You've learned something they haven't yet. Sometimes the strongest act of self-love is to say nothing. 4. Let them look, but not touch. There are things that are only displayed behind bulletproof glass, not because they are fragile, but because they are irreplaceable. A relic, a jewel, something that has been battered by time, but still stands. Visible, but inaccessible. That's how your presence has to be after you leave. Impenetrable, untouchable. They can see you, but never reach you again. Because when you really withdraw, there's no need to hide. It's not about disappearing from the world or pretending you don't exist. It's about raising an emotional barrier that not even the most skillful manipulation can cross. They can see you, but they know they can no longer touch you. Your energy, your time, your love, they're no longer for sale. That's when silence begins to do its job. They start to stalk from afar, to check your stories, to ask about you, to observe every move with the hope of finding a crack, a sign, an excuse to come back in. But all they find is what you allow them to see, the image of someone who no longer needs anything from them. And that hurts more than any scream, because the power of mystery destroys more than confrontation. In Stoicism, true strength is not avoiding conflict. It's mastering the impulse. It's resisting the temptation to let them affect you, even if they're close, even if they speak, even if they search. It's maintaining composure when you know they want to drag you back to that hell you came out of. And there will be those who say you're acting, that you're showing happiness just to get noticed. Ignore that. That's the voice of the wounded ego, of the one losing control. Because they can no longer touch you, they can no longer enter, they can no longer manage your emotions as before, and inside, that consumes them. It's not about revenge, it's about boundaries. It's about them understanding that you're not an object of free access, that if they ever had you close, it was a privilege. And if now they can only look at you from afar, it's a consequence of their actions. No one loses what they take care of, so show yourself. Shine. Do it for you, not for them. Do it as a silent declaration of victory. I'm standing, even though you broke me. I'm moving forward, even though you left me empty. I'm rebuilding, and you're no longer part of that. Let them see, but not touch. They can't comment, manipulate, or intervene. They don't have access to your emotions, your time, or your peace. Because that's what's going to hurt them the most, knowing they're still looking at something that no longer belongs to them. And you, calm, firm, cold, if necessary. Because after all you've been through, you're not about to give second chances to those who couldn't even hold on to the first. You're a relic, not because you're fragile, because you're valuable. 5. Become forbidden territory. There are places in the world where no one enters without permission, restricted areas, sealed borders, territories that were once open to free passage, but after suffering damage, were fenced off, protected, armored. Not out of fear, but out of awareness, because they learned that not everyone who enters takes care. You have to become that, a sacred ground where not just anyone steps. After a toxic relationship, your soul is left like a ravaged field, marks everywhere, silences that scream, wounds that are not seen but remain open. And if you don't set real boundaries, if you don't shield yourself from the inside, you allow them to enter again. And this time, what they are going to break is not your trust. It's what's left of you. Becoming forbidden territory is not about isolating yourself. It's not about hardening completely or living in fear. It's about raising your standard. It's about knowing your worth, not from the ego, but from experience. It's looking back and saying, of that version of me that gave myself without filters, that justified everything, that endured the unbearable, there is nothing left. It's very likely that they will try to approach again, first with nostalgia, then with guilt, then with promises, because for the toxic person, your distance is not a closure, it's a challenge. They are bothered by not having access. It hurts them that you are no longer available because they saw you as a free space without borders. And now, for the first time, they realize that they cannot re-enter without destroying themselves against the wall you raised. Stoicism does not preach revenge, but it does preach clarity. And being clear is learning to say, you've come this far. This is no longer your place. Because when you don't set boundaries, you're not showing yourself to be good. You're becoming accessible to what destroys you, and that, sooner or later, will cost you dearly. Becoming forbidden territory is starting to protect your energy as if it were gold. It's learning to recognize red flags without romanticizing them. It's looking at the face of someone who comes back with excuses and not trembling. It's not falling. Not even when your emotions ask you to open the door just a little bit, because a little bit is enough for them to enter and ravage again. It's also going to hurt, because there's a part of you that still wants to believe that you can save the other, that wants to believe that everything can get better, that this time will be different. That part has to die, because if it doesn't die, you die. Respect is not asked for, it is imposed, with actions, with decisions, with absences. And when someone crosses your boundary, they are not given a warning. Their access is cut off, not out of hatred, out of dignity. From now on, anyone who wants to approach you has to prove that they are up to the task. And if they are not, let them stay where they are. watching from the outside, like someone observing fertile land to which they no longer have rights. You are not territory for emotional tourists. You are not a refuge for those who only come when they feel alone. You are solid ground. You are sacred place. And from now on, you are forbidden territory for those who did not know how to take care of you when they had you. 6. Don't look back, not even out of curiosity. The traveler who survives the desert doesn't stop to look at the sand he left behind. It doesn't matter how beautiful the dunes were. It doesn't matter how much the storms hurt. If he turns his head, he loses his rhythm. He slows down. He dries up. He buries himself. The same goes for people. If you manage to get out, don't look back. Not out of nostalgia, not out of doubt, not out of curiosity, because sometimes a simple glance is enough to get you trapped again. Looking back doesn't always mean physically returning. Sometimes it's enough to check an old chat, to spy on a story on social media, to wonder if it was really that bad. And that's where self-deception begins. The idealization, the distortion of memory, that part of you that sabotages you starts, whispering that maybe you exaggerated, that maybe you could try one more time. That's not love. That's addiction. To routine, to the familiar, to the habit of being where it hurt, just because you don't know how to live without that wound. The brain, according to neuroscience, doesn't distinguish between a toxic bond and a drug. Both release dopamine, both hook you, both make you feel alive amidst suffering. That's why looking back isn't innocent. It's exposing yourself to the same poison, hoping it won't hurt you. The Stoics didn't talk about blocking people from the past with a finger. They talked about blocking with reason, with firmness, with discernment. They said that the wise man doesn't let himself be carried away by the emotion of the moment, but chooses what is best in the long run. And looking back is never better. It's never necessary. It only feeds a fire that should already be extinguished. You're going to be tempted. Of course you are. You're going to have moments of loneliness, doubt, emptiness. You're going to want to know if the other person thinks about you, if they're with someone else, if they've changed. But that doesn't help you. It doesn't add to you. It doesn't heal you. It drags you, because the one who looks too much at the past stumbles in the present. And you've already suffered too much to stumble over the same stone just because you can't control an impulse. If you close the door, don't open it to peek. Don't measure your worth based on whether you're missed or not. Don't confuse memory with a sign. Sometimes remembering is just that, a mental reflex, not an invitation, not a call, not a reason to return. And if temptation wins, stop yourself, breathe it in, feel it, but don't act. Let the impulse pass like a wave, because if you don't stop it in time, you're going to get back into the same dark sea that you swam out of with the last strength you had. Don't look back, not out of fear, not out of pride, but because you already know what's there. There's nothing new. There's nothing better. Only ruins disguised as memories. And your life is ahead. Keep walking, with a firm gaze, with your heart focused on what's coming. Because if you manage to get out of there, if you rebuilt yourself, if you're getting up again, the only thing that can stop you now is looking back. 7. Let your silence speak louder than your phrases. A newly forged edge doesn't need to make noise to cut. It's its presence, its precision, its firmness, what commands respect. That's how your silence should be, sharp, contained, accurate. It doesn't seek to hurt, but if underestimated, it leaves marks. Silence is not the absence of voice. It's the presence of power, and when you master it, it speaks clearer than any speech. After a toxic relationship, one of the strongest impulses is to explain yourself, to say what you feel, what you suffered, what you expected, to seek understanding from the other person, that at least this time they listen. But that's just an illusion. The need to be understood by someone who was never willing to understand you. And there you lose, because every word is a thread you keep leaving connected. When you opt for silence, you're making a strategic decision. It's no longer about keeping quiet out of fear or resignation. It's about understanding that speaking is opening a door and you've already closed yours. That speaking is inviting to the game and you've already stepped off the board. Because if you learned anything from that bond, it's that sometimes self-love is pronounced by saying nothing. Silence is uncomfortable. It bothers. It provokes. It disarms. Because it's impossible to manipulate someone who doesn't respond. You can't twist the will of someone who no longer needs to justify their distance. The one who keeps quiet, the one who really leaves without explaining, leaves no room for mind games. Only a void remains. And that void hurts. Because there's no worse punishment for someone who took you for granted than your complete and irreversible indifference. Stoicism doesn't tell you not to feel. It tells you not to react impulsively, not to surrender control of your actions to the emotions of the moment, to be master of yourself, even when everything inside is burning. And in that practice, silence is discipline. It's resistance, it's maturity, it's looking chaos in the face and choosing not to enter. They're going to try everything. They're going to touch your weak points. They're going to look for a phrase of yours to use against you, to play the victim, to drag you back. But if you stand firm, if you breathe deep and don't respond, the message is clear. I'm not the same person you left weak. And that, for someone who fed off your reaction, is unbearable. Don't get it wrong. Silence is not a lack of character. It's character in its purest form. It's having everything you want to say burning in your throat and choosing not to let it out, because you know it's not worth it. Because you understand that if you have to force someone to listen to you, then it was never a conversation. It was a trial. And you're not here to keep defending yourself. Let your silence say it all. Let it be the echo that bounces in their head. Let it be the doubt that doesn't clear up. Let it be the ending without explanation. Because when someone knows what they did, your silence is the clearest sentence. And when someone doesn't know, they won't understand it. No matter how much you explain it with tears, be silent, not to hide, but to teach yourself that your peace is worth more than any phrase, that you no longer need to have the last word, because the last word is to say nothing. 8. Break all the threads that still connect them to you. A puppeteer doesn't need to shout orders. He just needs the threads to remain intact. A small tug, a subtle movement, and they make you dance again. No matter how far away you are, if there are still threads that bind them to you, they continue to control you. Therefore, if you really want to free yourself, you have to break them all. Not one, not some, all. And I'm not just talking about stopping talking to them. I'm talking about cutting off every invisible point that still ties you to that person. Because after leaving a toxic relationship, many times you leave physically, but emotionally, you're still there. Tied to guilt, to memory, to hope, to broken promises, to what could have been. And that is just as destructive as continuing to sleep with the enemy. Because the body leaves, but the mind remains chained. Breaking the threads means making a radical act of honesty with yourself. Ask yourself what part of you is still waiting for a sign. What part of you clings to the idea that someday that person will change, value you, return repentant? What part of you checks their networks, keeps the photos, mentally reviews each conversation looking for answers? And once you see it, don't punish yourself, but cut it off from the root. The Stoics spoke of apatheia, a state in which one achieves inner freedom because they are not dominated by destructive passions. It's not about not feeling, but about not being a slave to what you feel. And breaking the threads is precisely about that, regaining control over yourself. Because as long as those bonds remain alive, even if they are invisible, your peace will not be real. It will be fragile, conditional, momentary. Cutting all the threads also means letting go of the character you had in that story. Stop being the one who saved, the one who forgave, the one who waited, the one who endured. You are no longer that version of you. You can no longer continue acting as if you had to prove something. That relationship ended, and if there is still a role you are playing, you are trapped in a play that is no longer being performed, but that continues to consume your energy. And yes, it hurts, because letting go completely is accepting that there is no turning back, that there will be no perfect closure, that there will be no redemption, no poetic justice, no cinematic regret. There is only silence. And that silence feels like emptiness, like loss. But it is the price of freedom. Because as long as you expect something to happen, as long as you cling to the slightest thread, you continue to give away your power. Breaking the threads is to stop talking. Even in your head, it's not to repeat over and over what they did to you, what you said, what you kept quiet. It's not to respond to their provocations, not even in your mind. It's not to imagine reunion scenarios. It's to erase their numbers. It's to eliminate the memories that only feed a story that no longer has more chapters. And above all, it's to stop asking yourself if they miss you, if they think about you, if your departure hurt them. Because all of that are threads, some subtle, others thick, but all equally dangerous. When you break the threads, you are left alone with yourself. And that can be scary, because there are no more excuses. You can no longer blame the other. It's your turn to heal. It's your turn to grow. It's your turn to rebuild yourself from scratch without depending on anyone. But that's where true peace begins. The one that doesn't depend on whether they look for you, name you, or remember you. The one that comes from real, deep silence. The one that doesn't break in the face of nostalgia. And if you ever doubt, if you are ever tempted to pull on that thread again to see if there is still something, remember this: if you need to hurt yourself to feel that you exist for someone, then it's not love, it's dependence. And you weren't born to live hooked on a rope that doesn't let you move forward. Cut with strength, without guilt, because only when you break all the threads do you start to be truly free. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. If you watched the whole thing, comment "I am Stoic" as our secret signal to know that you're a true student of Stoicism. Don't forget to subscribe and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. See you in the next video, and remember, keep cultivating your Stoic mind.